Hi, I'm Matt with Artista Music. For this first video in our beginner guitar course series, we're going to go over the different parts that make up the guitar. Well, why do you need to know the different parts? Well, it's much like knowing the parts that make up a vehicle before you actually start operating it. You need to know where your gas and brake pedals are, you need to know where your steering wheel is, and also your gear shift. Same thing with the guitar. That's going to help you when you need to do maintenance, but also when we talk about playing techniques, we're going to be referencing different components on the guitar itself. This is also going to help you when you're talking with other instrumentalists and also giving direction and also receiving direction. Now, there are a lot of pieces that make up the instrument, and by going off one by one, even in alphabetical order, it's going to be overwhelming. So we're going to break up the guitar into 3 separate pieces. Let me show you what I mean. So those 3 sections are going to be the head, the neck, and the body of the guitar. We're going to start with the body first. Now, the parts that I want to pick out on the body are the ones that you really don't see too often when you're looking at somebody playing. That's going to be the back and the sides of the instrument. Now, on an acoustic, these are just to amplify the sound. This is to make that guitar sound very loud and proud. The real work on the body, though, is on this piece here. You'll notice how the color for this part and the back and the sides is different. That different piece of wood is called the soundboard. Now, the soundboard is the real workhorse of the instrument, besides the string and, of course, you. The quality and type of the wood really affects the guitar's sound and what gives it its really unique flavor. Now, there's more to the soundboard than just the different type of wood. Let me show you what I mean. Our first stop on the soundboard is this strip of wood. This is called a bridge. Now, an easy way you can remember that, the strings are anchored into the bridge, much like cables are anchored into the roadway on a suspension bridge. So this strip of wood is a bridge. These black dots that you see here are actually pins, and they're called bridge pins. They help anchor the strings into the bridge and the soundboard. That's what keeps the strings from flying back. Now you'll see this little strip of light-colored wood here. A lot of times that's going to be either ivory or plastic. Now, that's called a saddle. An easy way to remember that is, well, when you sit on a horse, you sit on a saddle. So, the strings are sitting on a saddle. Our next stop are this little plastic piece that's right here. Now this is called a pick guard. What the pick guard does, it protects the soundboard from wear and tear, mostly when you're using a pick, and that's why we call it a pick guard. If you don't have one of these, over time, the pick is going to wear away the soundboard, which is going to negatively affect the sound of your guitar. So that protects it. We also have here our strings. So obviously we already know that guitars have strings. It's a stringed instrument, so that obviously makes the sound of your guitar. Now this deep hole that's right here is of course called a sound hole because that's where the sound comes out of. Remember we talked about the back and sides amplifying the sound. Well, the sound needs to travel out of somewhere. That's where the sound hole comes in. You'll also see these decorative rings around the sound hole. This is called a rosette. A lot of times there's really no playing function to it, it just looks really nice. Now that we've taken care of the body, let's start talking about the neck of the guitar. Now, on the neck of the guitar, there's a plank of wood that rests on top of it. This is called the fretboard. Now, we call it the fretboard because, well, it's covered with frets. Frets are the metal bars that rest or are embedded into the fretboard. You'll also notice how the spaces between them gradually get larger as we go up towards the head of the guitar. In a later lesson, we're going to talk about that. On the fretboard, you'll also notice dots that are spread throughout. These are called inlays. Now, the purpose on these is to help keep your bearings when you're going from one chord or one note to another. Moving from our fretboard, you'll notice we come across to a piece of plastic here. This is called the nut. Now, the nut functions similar to how the saddle did when we were at our bridge. The strings are resting on the nut, and that allows it to be anchored to another portion of the guitar. Following the strings, you'll notice that they're anchored to these posts. These are called string posts. you'll notice the string is wound up, and that's how the string is securely fastened onto the guitar itself. Now, you'll come across these little metal pieces here. Now, these have a lot of names: tuners, tuning pegs, machine heads. We're just going to call them tuners for right now because, well, that's their function. By making small or big adjustments, you actually change the sound of your guitar. So that's the basics when it comes to the parts of the guitar. Now, you've learned a lot, so what I want you to do is to always replay this video and make sure that you have all these pieces and terms committed to memory. There's also parts, though, that we can't see. One of them in particular is actually inside the neck of the guitar, and that's called the truss rod. What is a truss rod? Well, the truss rod is a piece of metal, it's a little metal bar, that gives the neck some support. On your steel string instruments, you need that extra support because the steel strings have so much tension. Now, on your nylon string instruments, because they're a little bit more pliable and they're softer, your neck is only going to be a solid piece of wood. It doesn't need that bar in there. Another thing to mention is, well, for this example, we used an acoustic instrument. That's usually what people get when they want to learn how to play guitar first. Now, if you're playing an electric instrument, a lot of these pieces apply to you as well. But we do have a video that's specific for the parts of the electric guitar, so definitely check that out if you're using an electric. Now, definitely join us in the next lesson, because now we're going to take that guitar and talk about how it applies to your body posture. We want to prevent injury, and we also want to make sure that you're comfortable when you start playing music.